A disturbance in time. Temporal monitoring station T-394 hung suspended in the emptiness between two galaxies, as inconspicuous as an afterthought in the vastness of space. The station was tasked with a singular vital mission: to observe any disruptions in the fabric of time itself. Its purpose was both crucial and monotonous, monitoring for anomalies in the space-time continuum, ensuring that nothing unexpected or dangerous could slip through the cracks of reality. There was little to do but wait, predict, and analyze. The night shift crew consisted of 3 beings: a crystalline entity who spent most of their time contemplating theoretical physics for amusement, a gaseous consciousness who had joined the station to search for their purpose, and a carbon-based bureaucrat who mostly found themselves complaining about the station's recycled air. It was a shift like any other, routine, predictable, and uneventful, until something happened that would change everything. The crystalline entity, engrossed in solving an intricate 7-dimensional Sudoku puzzle, blinked their facets in surprise, momentarily causing a brilliant light show that distracted the gaseous consciousness from their latest attempt at deep space meditation. The entity's crystalline structure vibrated with excitement. They had noticed something that shouldn't have been there, a disruption in the very space-time fabric they were designed to monitor. "Well, that's theoretically impossible," the crystalline entity muttered, their excitement vibrating through their crystalline form, creating a small cascade of colors. The gaseous consciousness condensed slightly, floating closer to the monitor in curiosity. "What's theoretically impossible?" they asked in a serene but intrigued tone. The crystalline entity's facets shifted as they stared intently at their data. "We've detected a temporal signal from Earth." The gaseous consciousness paused, their form momentarily ceasing its swirling movements. "Earth? That backwater planet with bipedal creatures who think digital watches are the pinnacle of technology. Are you sure?" "Quite sure," the crystalline entity confirmed, still vibrating with the energy of discovery. "Except this signal isn't from their present. It's from their future, about 300 years ahead of where they currently are." The carbon-based bureaucrat, who had been engrossed in drafting a complaint about the station's lack of comfortable break rooms, glanced up from their datapad with practiced disinterest. "You're telling the Earth, that tiny, primitive planet, somehow managed to send a message from the future?" The crystalline entity's excitement grew. "Yes, and not just any message, but one addressed directly to us, specifically to the Galactic Council." The bureaucrat's appendages twitched involuntarily, causing several neatly organized complaint forms to float into the zero-gravity environment. "That's not just theoretically impossible," they grumbled. "It's bureaucratically impossible. We haven't even approved them for interstellar communication, let alone temporal messaging." "Tell that to the signal," the crystalline entity replied, their form almost dancing with delight. "It's encrypted using principles of quantum entanglement, something they shouldn't discover for at least another century." "Let me guess," the bureaucrat said, their tone heavy with sarcasm. "There's no form number, no official seals, no properly formatted header, right?" "Exactly," the crystalline entity responded, their voice full of glee. "In fact, there's not even a regulation-compliant greeting. It just starts with, 'To whom it may concern,' and goes on from there." The gaseous consciousness condensed even more, their equivalent of raising an eyebrow. Did they just sass the entire Galactic Council? Through time? "Oh, it gets better," the crystalline entity said, their facets now practically shimmering with amusement. "Not only did they skip all protocol, but they included detailed mathematical proofs of not just how they sent the message, but also why the Council's current approach to containing the quantum anomaly in the Carina Nebula is going to backfire spectacularly." The bureaucrat's color shifted through several hues in quick succession, signaling a deepening sense of dread and frustration. "This is unprecedented. Unprecedented." They flailed a bit, causing their meticulously organized complaint forms to float into the air once more. "They can't just. They haven't even. We haven't even." The crystalline entity interrupted them, their voice now a touch more serious. The math checks out. Their predictions are accurate, and their solution, it's elegant. The bureaucrats' appendages twisted in knots, the stress of the situation making their color oscillate rapidly. Do you have any idea how much paperwork this is going to generate? They're violating every rule in the book. Well, technically, the crystalline entity said with a hint of amusement. They've already broken about 47 regulations, but they were nice enough to include a note. P.S. Yes, we know this breaks a lot of your regulations, but we counted. Would have broken more, but we got bored. The gaseous consciousness gave an audible sigh that rippled through the surrounding air, their voice filled with amusement. You have to admit, their style is impressive. The bureaucrat finally gave in, their body sagging in resignation. This is not how bureaucracy is supposed to work, they muttered under their breath. But even they couldn't suppress a slight chuckle. I suppose it's too much to ask for something as simple as forms filled out correctly. The crystalline entity's facets shimmered once more, radiating excitement. They also included a postscript. It says, "Please forward this to someone who can actually do something about it, preferably before the universe implodes. Thanks." The bureaucrats slumped deeper into their harness, muttering to themselves, "Why didn't we just stick to something less complicated, like cataloging star systems?" Despite the apparent chaos, the crystalline entity's mood remained light. They'd done more in one message than we've done in several hundred years of regulations. They're saving us from ourselves. The gaseous consciousness, now vibrating with curiosity, said, "So, what happens now?" The Galactic Council reacts. As the message shot through space toward the Galactic Council's headquarters, the three beings at Temporal Monitoring Station T-394 settled in to wait. The Council's emergency session chamber was filled with an energy not felt since the Great Space Hamster Uprising of 2387, a time travel paradox that had been reported, yet hadn't happened. At least, not yet. Representatives from 17 different species crowded the chamber, their varying forms and energy fields causing a controlled chaos that made the room feel like it was on the verge of collapse. At the center of the pandemonium stood the High Counselor, a being composed entirely of living equations and pure mathematical thought. They stood tall and still, their presence commanding attention, yet there was an unmistakable crackle of nervous tension in the air. "Order, order," the High Counselor intoned, their voice amplified by a series of quantum calculations. The Council recognizes the representative from the rational hive mind collective. A shimmering cloud of interconnected nodes pulsed in the air, representing the collective consciousness of a species that could never be seen in individual form. The representative from the hive mind began speaking, their voice calm but filled with indignation. The implications of this human message are staggering. Not only have they mastered temporal communication without any training or proper procedure, but they've done it using principles we haven't even theorized yet. It's a breach of protocol, a violation of every known regulation. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room, and several members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The tension was palpable, with many struggling to understand how a species that had once been so primitive, only a few centuries ago, at best, could have breached the laws of time so effortlessly. The crystalline entity, now promoted to emergency consultant due to their first-hand experience with the message, chimed in with glee. Actually, they included a note about that too. It says, "We tried to find your proper forms, but your future website was down for maintenance for 3 weeks in an emergency." Really? The room fell silent. The Council was on the brink of crisis. Earth, once thought to be a primitive backwater of the galaxy, had just sent a message through time, and it was a message that would forever alter the course of galactic history. What was humanity really capable of, and what would they do next? This was just the beginning, and in the silence that followed, the question lingered in the minds of every member present. Was humanity a threat to the galaxy, or was it the salvation they never expected? The universe would soon find out. The unexpected consequences of human innovation. The chaos in the Galactic Council's emergency session chamber had only just begun to settle when the High Counselor, still attempting to regain some semblance of order, called for silence. The chamber, once filled with the hum of restless energy fields and the low murmurs of frustrated species, had now grown deathly quiet. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's leading minds were at a loss for words. At the center of the room, representatives from each species sat, hovering in various states of disbelief and confusion. The notion that a species as primitive as humanity could possess the technological capabilities to breach the space-time continuum was too absurd to comprehend. After all, the galaxy's collective wisdom had long assumed that Earth, known for its erratic, somewhat laughable progress in scientific endeavors, was still in the infancy of its interstellar development. Yet here they were, confronted with the unthinkable. A message from Earth, traveling through time to warn them about the impending failure of the containment strategy for the quantum anomaly in the Carina Nebula. The representative from the Galactic Bureaucracy Consortium adjusted his monocle and cleared his throat. "High Counselor," he said, his voice stern yet laced with an undercurrent of panic, "this message clearly violates every principle we've established for temporal communication. It's unregulated, unauthorized, and frankly, unbelievable. How did we miss this?" The High Counselor's equation-based form shifted, pulsing with rapid calculations, a sure sign that they were trying to piece together the astronomical ramifications of what had just occurred. They did not immediately respond, their energy field vibrating with complex quantum probabilities. Finally, the High Counselor spoke, their voice resonating with both frustration and awe. "There's no denying the implications of this message. The temporal anomaly they mention in the Carina Nebula is more dangerous than we thought. But what worries me most is not their message. It's the fact that they sent it at all." The crystalline entity from Temporal Monitoring Station, T-394, still riding the high of their earlier discovery, spoke up once more, their facets glistening with excitement. "What troubles you, Counselor, is not just the message itself, but the fact that a species as primitive as humanity has managed to outsmart us all. Think about it. They've bypassed every regulation, broken every protocol, and in doing so, they've saved us from ourselves." The gaseous consciousness, who had spent the entire session swirling in meditative silence, now condensed to their most solid form, leaning forward with intense interest. "Let me get this straight," they said, their voice a dense cloud of thought. "These humans, who, mind you, still think cat videos are the pinnacle of entertainment, have just successfully navigated the laws of temporal communication, and their data checks out." The crystalline entity chuckled, sending ripples of light across their structure. "Precisely. They've calculated their temporal breach with perfect precision. If we follow their instructions, the anomaly in the Carina Nebula will collapse in on itself and prevent the catastrophic expansion we've been predicting for centuries." The bureaucratic representative, now visibly sweating from the stress of the situation, leaned back in their seat and began to adjust the stack of papers they had brought into the meeting. "It's preposterous," they muttered, barely audible. "How could a species that still struggles to master interstellar travel have figured out temporal mechanics before we did?" The crystalline entity turned to face the bureaucratic representative, their facets shimmering with a blend of amusement and awe. "That's the point, isn't it? They'd done something no one in this room has dared to do. They've challenged the established order. And perhaps they were right to do so." The High Counselor's dilemma. The High Counselor's complex form pulsed with increasing urgency as the mathematical implications of the situation began to unfold before them. The human message had come not just with a warning, but with the undeniable proof that the galaxy's current containment strategies for the Carina Nebula anomaly were fundamentally flawed. The calculations they had provided indicated that, without a shift in approach, the anomaly's collapse would not only accelerate, it would trigger a chain reaction that would destabilize the entire sector of space. "Can we trust them?" the High Counselor asked, their voice a combination of doubt and curiosity. A species so young, so unpolished in their approach to technology. How can we be sure that their solutions are sound? The representative from the rational hive mind, a species known for their logical precision, spoke up. The proof is in their calculations. According to our own data, their predictions align perfectly with the existing quantum field dynamics in the Carina Nebula. If we reject their solution out of hand, we risk not only the collapse of the anomaly, but the destabilization of the entire quadrant. If we do nothing, the human race will not just be a nuisance. They will be a force capable of reshaping the future. The room fell into a tense silence as the enormity of the situation began to sink in. Humanity, once dismissed as a backwater civilization with no real impact on galactic affairs, had suddenly become the focal point of the galaxy's most critical issue. Their actions, their ingenuity, and even their disobedience had forced the galaxy's elite minds to confront a reality they had long ignored. The human race was capable of more than just survival. They were capable of leading. A bold decision. The High Counselor finally spoke, their voice calm but resolute. We have no choice but to act on their message. The evidence is irrefutable. However, we must also prepare for the consequences of acting outside the regulations. If this goes wrong, if their calculations are incorrect or their solution fails, it will be the galaxy itself that pays the price. The representative from Applied Common Sense, a species known for their practical approach to problems, nodded. Then it settled. We proceed with the humans' plan. It's the only viable solution, and we can't afford to ignore it. As the emergency session continued, a sense of unease lingered in the air. The council had made a decision, but there was no guarantee that it would work. The human race had just demonstrated an ability to alter the course of history with a single, unregulated act of defiance, and now they were about to be thrust into the center of a galaxy-shaking event. But what no one in the room could have predicted was the far-reaching impact that humanity's boldness would have. As the council moved forward with their unorthodox plan, a series of events began to unfold that would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about the nature of time, space, and civilization itself. The human influence expands. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the first ripples of change were already being felt. Humanity had been thrust into the galactic spotlight, but they had no idea what consequences their actions would bring. The signal they had sent through time was not just a message, it was the beginning of a new era. An era in which Earth, a planet that had long been seen as inconsequential, would rise to become a key player in the fate of the galaxy. As Earth's leaders received the message, they began to prepare for a future they had never imagined. They had always dreamed of interstellar travel, of making their mark on the galaxy. But no one had expected that they would be called upon to solve a crisis that could threaten the very fabric of the universe. The true nature of the Carina Nebula. The true nature of the Carina Nebula anomaly, however, was still largely unknown. Even the humans who had sent the warning couldn't fully understand the force they were dealing with. But what they had done was undeniable. They had introduced a new way of thinking, a new perspective on how to solve problems that transcended the boundaries of space and time. As the galaxy worked to implement humanity's solution, the first signs of success began to appear. The anomaly, once thought to be an insurmountable problem, began to collapse inward, as predicted. The space surrounding it stabilized, and the universe seemed to exhale a collective sigh of relief. But in the depths of the nebula, something else stirred. The galaxy had only just begun to realize that this was not just a quantum anomaly, it was a doorway. And as the doorway opened, a new chapter in the history of the universe began to unfold. Humanity, once relegated to the role of observer, was now taking the lead. Their ingenuity, boldness, and disregard for bureaucratic red tape had not only saved the galaxy from disaster, they had opened a door to something far greater. But what lay beyond that door was a mystery that even the wisest minds in the galaxy could not fathom. The unexpected awakening. As the situation on the Galactic Council shifted in favor of humanity's bold intervention, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The Carina Nebula anomaly, once a harbinger of doom, now appeared to be collapsing as humanity's plan unfolded with unnerving accuracy. But what seemed like a victory in the making was quickly overshadowed by an even greater mystery, one that no one, not even humanity, had anticipated. While the anomaly itself was being contained, strange signals began to emanate from the heart of the Carina Nebula. These signals were faint at first, almost imperceptible, but they began to intensify over the next few weeks. The signals were not like any known transmission. They were a complex mix of encrypted data, quantum frequencies, and patterns that defied all traditional means of communication. The first to notice this anomaly was the crystalline entity from Temporal Monitoring Station T-394. They had been running a routine check on the nebula's energy signature when their sensors picked up a disturbing shift. It wasn't the quantum anomaly they had been expecting. It was something else entirely. Something that had lain dormant for eons, only now beginning to stir. "Something's wrong," the crystalline entity murmured, their structure flickering with a cascade of light. They adjusted the frequency filters, trying to isolate the source of the disturbance. These signals, they're not from the humans. The gaseous consciousness, always quick to pick up on unusual patterns, condensed into their most focused form. "What do you mean?" they asked, their voice steady but laced with curiosity. "Are these signals related to the anomaly?" The crystalline entity's light flickered ominously. "Not quite. The anomaly is collapsing as expected. But these signals, they're coming from deep within the nebula. They're old, ancient, as if something is waking up." The gaseous consciousness twirled thoughtfully. "Something is waking up in the heart of the nebula. But that's impossible. The anomaly should have prevented anything from surviving there." "That's what we thought," the crystalline entity replied, their facets dimming in uncertainty. "But the signals they're from a civilization older than anything we've cataloged. The patterns, they match nothing in our records. The ancient presence beneath the nebula." Far from the monitoring stations and the Galactic Council's headquarters, the real drama was unfolding within the very heart of the Carina Nebula. The anomaly, though collapsing, was revealing something that had been hidden for untold millennia. Deep beneath the shifting energy fields, there lay an ancient structure, a remnant of a long-forgotten civilization. It was enormous, far larger than any known space station, and it pulsed with a strange energy, one that wasn't of this galaxy. The signals that had been detected from the nebula were not just encrypted messages. They were the last vestiges of a civilization that had harnessed forces beyond understanding. Their technology was unlike anything the galaxy had seen, weaving together the physical and the metaphysical in ways that seemed impossible. As the anomaly continued to collapse, the true nature of the ancient presence began to make itself known. A massive crystalline structure began to materialize in the center of the nebula, its edges shimmering with an ethereal light. This was no ordinary construction. It was an artifact of immense power, built by a civilization so advanced that their presence had been forgotten by time itself. The Galactic Council, still reeling from the implications of humanity's message, scrambled to respond to this new threat. But it wasn't just a threat, it was a mystery. No one knew who had built the structure or how it had survived the ravages of time. The signals emanating from the structure were becoming increasingly frantic, as though the being or beings within were attempting to communicate, but their language was one of raw energy, not words. The doorway to the unknown. As the final calculations aligned and the Carina Nebula anomaly began its slow collapse, the galaxy held its collective breath. The first signs of stabilization had been marked by small, almost imperceptible changes. Ripples in the quantum field, a subtle reduction in the energy flux that had once threatened to tear apart entire sectors of space. It was as if the universe itself had briefly held its breath, waiting for humanity's solution to unfold. Yet, even as the anomaly began to shrink, a new and terrifying truth began to reveal itself. What had once been assumed to be a cosmic accident, a random fluctuation in the fabric of space-time, was now beginning to appear as something much more deliberate, as if it were designed to do exactly what it had done: expand and collapse at a precise moment in time. The problem had not been merely a threat to the galaxy's stability. It was a harbinger of something larger, something far more complex. For the first time in history, the galaxy's most advanced species were faced with a question that none of them had ever considered. Had they been the architects of their own impending doom? A mysterious force beneath the collapse. As the last remnants of the anomaly folded in on itself, an unsettling ripple traveled through the galactic core. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a brief disturbance, a minor deviation in the cosmic fabric. But the more the galaxy's observatories scanned, the clearer it became that this wasn't just the quiet end of an anomaly. It was a signal, a pattern. The galactic powers, who had worked tirelessly to prevent the catastrophe, now found themselves with a new problem. What had caused the Carina Nebula anomaly in the first place? What force had triggered this event, and why did it happen at such a precise moment in history? The Galactic Council convened again, this time in greater urgency. They had already agreed to humanity's solution, but the ramifications were still unfolding in real time. Earth's temporal communication had not just solved one problem. It had opened the door to a completely new kind of cosmic question, one that they weren't prepared to answer. The High Counselor, as always, was the first to address the Council, their mathematical form flickering with uncertainty. "We've managed to contain the immediate threat, but the deeper question remains: why was the anomaly set to collapse now, and why was Earth's involvement so crucial?" The anomaly may have been part of a much larger design, one we're only just beginning to understand. Representatives from various species nodded, their collective energy vibrating with nervousness. Some had already begun to suspect that this was no mere accident. Humanity's intervention was more than just a lucky coincidence. It was as if Earth had always been meant to play this pivotal role. Humanity's true role in the cosmic equation. Back on Earth, the news of their unexpected role in stabilizing the galaxy's future had sparked a wave of disbelief and awe. Humanity, who had once struggled to earn a seat at the galactic table, was now thrust into the spotlight. Their message from the future, improper, unregulated, and unorthodox, had saved the universe from a disaster that had been years in the making. But the true extent of their role was still being uncovered. Humanity had unlocked a door that the galaxy hadn't even known existed. It was only when the first fleet of Earth's diplomats and researchers reached the edge of the Carina Nebula, in the wake of the anomaly's collapse, that the full scope of the situation began to come into focus. Their mission was simple: explore the remnants of the anomaly and uncover its origins. But what they found was anything but simple. The fleet arrived at the point where the anomaly had once expanded. But now, there was a vast, empty space, an eerie void where reality itself had warped and torn. Sensors detected strange energy patterns, unlike anything they had ever encountered. As they ventured further into the heart of the void, their instruments began picking up irregular readings, signals that were not just a byproduct of the anomaly, but something more deliberate, something that had been waiting. A message was hidden in the very fabric of space itself. As the Earth researchers deployed their probes, they discovered something terrifying. Encoded in the quantum fields of the void were blueprints, plans, designs, and calculations that appeared to be of alien origin. But these were not typical alien technologies. These were complex, intricate patterns that suggested a deep understanding of time itself. The designs seemed to center around the creation of black holes, the manipulation of space-time, and the control of quantum anomalies, just like the one in the Carina Nebula. The researchers sent their findings back to Earth. This was no ordinary cosmic accident. The anomaly had been created, intentionally manipulated, and it had been guiding the universe towards a singular event. The moment humanity's message reached the galaxy, the hidden architects. The deeper the Earth researchers dug, the clearer it became that the anomalies were not natural phenomena. They were the result of an ancient force, one far older than any civilization in the galaxy. These designs were left behind by a species known only as the architects, beings who had mastered not just space and time, but the very fabric of the universe itself. The architects, it seemed, had disappeared long ago, leaving only their cryptic messages and blueprints scattered throughout the galaxy. Their technology had been designed to shape the cosmos, to manipulate the structure of reality in ways that no living species had yet understood. And now their long-forgotten creations were beginning to reawaken, starting with the Carina Nebula anomaly. As the council members processed this new information, a sense of dread filled the chamber. The architects had built a system so vast, so interconnected, that it had been hidden in plain sight for millennia. Their blueprint had guided the course of the galaxy, subtly influencing the rise and fall of civilizations, the births and deaths of stars. And now humanity had stumbled upon it, by accident or perhaps by fate. The crystalline entity from Temporal Monitoring Station, T-394, spoke again, their facets glowing with an unsettling realization. The architects didn't just create anomalies, they created a chain reaction. The collapse of the Carina Nebula was only the first step. The next phase of their design is set to activate, and humanity, for better or worse, has been chosen to lead it. The gaseous consciousness, ever the optimist, seemed lost in thought. But how can we be sure? Could humanity's intervention be part of this plan? Did they know that by solving the anomaly, they would unlock the next stage? It's possible, the crystalline entity replied. The message we received from Earth didn't just warn us about the anomaly. It was a signal, one that activated something deep within the quantum field. The architects may have laid the groundwork for this moment long ago, knowing that Earth would play its part at the right time. We've only just begun to understand their designs, and we have no idea where it leads. Humanity's new purpose. As the council deliberated on the possible implications, back on Earth, the people were left to grapple with a reality they had never imagined. For centuries, humanity had looked to the stars with wonder and longing, dreaming of becoming part of a galactic community that had long considered them insignificant. But now, Earth was at the center of a cosmic event, a pivotal moment in the galaxy's history, where humanity's very existence might hold the key to saving or destroying it. Humanity had proven its resilience, its ingenuity, and its capacity to change the course of the galaxy. But the question that remained was, what would they do with this newfound power? Would they continue to follow the path set by the architects, or would they choose their own fate? The High Counselor and the rest of the council had no answers. They could only watch as humanity, a species that had once been regarded as nothing more than an oddity in the grand scheme of the universe, now stood on the precipice of something far greater. The doors to the unknown had been opened, and humanity's journey had only just begun. Would they be the architects of their own destiny? Or would they become pawns in a much larger game, one that had been set in motion long before their arrival? As the stars shone above and the galaxy held its breath, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again.